Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to the channel. Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be showing you how I do my wildlife photo editing. So if you're trying to learn, hopefully you can get some tips from this. These are just some things that I've learned over the years, some things that I've picked up through trial and error. I don't claim to be a professional, but maybe if you follow along, you can find some things that help you out. And I'm starting with this photo. This is a baby barred owl. I got this from filming a owl documentary, excuse me, an owl documentary this spring and summer. If you want to check out that documentary, it's in my playlist under the videos, so you can go check it out. I captured some pretty amazing stuff, and this owlet actually fell, and I was able to get a picture of it. Now, when I start, the first thing I do is I look up in the corner, and you can see here that the ISO is 1000. So that's not terribly high, but obviously it's far from ISO 100, which, you know, a lot of people like to keep the ISO low. So the first thing I do is I'm going to reduce the noise, and I use topaz denoise for this. So I'm going to go up to the top here. I'm going to go to photo, edit in, and I'm going to use topaz denoise. So what that's going to do is topaz denoise is going to open up. I'm going to say edit here. So it's nice that Lightroom automatically has kind of like the plug-in here, so it's all kind of connected. You don't have to open up all these different programs. And when you go into Topaz Denoise, they give you some different settings you can use: standard, clear, severe noise, low light. I almost always use clear. I don't know what it is I like about it. It looks a little bit sharper, and it looks obviously more clear to me. Nothing wrong with standard here. Sometimes you can't even tell the difference when looking at them, but I always go with clear. Now, because the ISO is 1000, I'm going to stick with the medium level here. If it was like 300 or 400, I'd probably just do low because I don't want it to look too fake. But once I start getting to 1000 to 2000, even up to 3200, I'm going to use medium. Then all I'm going to do is hit, so make sure you're on clear, medium, and hit apply. Now I'm using the MacBook Pro with the M3, and this is the laptop that I just got, and I can already notice that it's much faster when processing these edits through Topaz. So right now that's what it's doing. It's removing all the noise. Should be set in a little bit. And once it's finished processing, what it's going to do is take that finished process photo, and you can see that it brings you right back to Lightroom. Now, if you notice, it changed the title here. Now, my file is different. It's called denoise.tiff. So it's going to change the file. And then down at the bottom, you'll see a little 2 here, which means this is like your second version. You have your original raw, and you have this second version. So it's already looking pretty good. It looks a lot sharper and a lot more clear after all that noise was removed. So the next step I do is usually I like to crop it. I want to see how it's going to look in my final product. So when I'm trying to decide, I try to see how the bird is oriented or whatever I'm shooting. Now, because this one could go either way, because that branch is kind of coming out horizontally, so I could crop it horizontally, but the bird's also standing up kind of tall vertically, so I may play around with it. So we're going to go to crop. If you hit X, that changes between vertical and horizontal. And then I like to, for Instagram, I choose the 4x5/8x10. We're going to try vertical first. I'm the type of person that likes to like get really close in there. Occasionally I'll show a little bit of the surroundings, but we'll see what this looks like. So that doesn't look too bad. There's a little space up on top, so I could even come in a little tighter. So that's pretty good. And the next thing I do, and you could really play with these in any order. I don't know why, but I always reduce the highlights first because usually the highlights are too strong. And watch the feathers if you could see it here. As I bring down the highlights, you can see some of that. See, it's really bright here. And as I come down, it reduces some of that light, some of that shine off those feathers. And then the second thing that I always do is I always bring up the shadows. And as you bring up the shadows, you're going to see some of the blue in the barred owlet's eyes, right? In this owlet, watch when I go back, it's black. And then as I raise the shadow, I was surprised to see that these baby owlets actually have some blue in their eyes, and that comes out once you raise the shadows. I generally don't touch the whites, but sometimes I'll play with it. You can see as I go up, that's way too much. I may bring it down just a tad. The blacks are nice if you want to get even more, kind of bring out some more shadows, if you need to brighten it up a little bit. So I'm going to try that, but that seems to be a little too bright. I'm going to probably keep it right there. I'm not going to touch that. Then after I get all those settings, I usually go back and I play with the exposure. I always look at this in this little histogram area here. You can see I try to get as close to the right side as I can, unless it looks too bright to me. So that's way too bright. That tells me that I had the exposure pretty good right where I had it. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to leave the exposure right where I had it. If I want it to be a little bit more moody, you know, I could probably bring it down a little bit, but I'm going to keep it right where it was because I think that's pretty good. Now, for texture and clarity, I often kind of decide based on the picture which one I use. I don't try to use both of them too much because it gets a little too funky. I'll either decide, do I want to use mostly texture or mostly clarity? Now, with this baby owlet, you can see there's some great texture in the feathers, but some of that already kind of came out when I used denoise. It sharpened it a little bit. So again, this is just playing around with it. I may skip the texture on this one, and I'll raise the clarity a little bit. Usually that sharpens up the eye area a little bit too. See what happens when we raise the texture. Starts to get a little fake in the feathers, so I'm gonna just bring it down. This owlet already has some like naturally textured feathers here, so I don't have to kind of enhance it with the editing process. So I'm gonna leave texture kind of where it is, and we'll crank up the clarity a little bit. Dehaze, I hardly ever touch that. Vibrance and saturation, I don't really touch that unless it needs it. You know, this picture doesn't really need any of that. Again, if you want to kind of play with the color, sometimes if I want to make it a little bit more moody, I'll go to saturation. You can see these greens are really bright. If I don't really want that, I'll go to saturation. You know, I could turn down these greens a little bit. Kind of gives it a softer tone if I don't want it so bright. Again, you could play with the moodiness of your photo through that. I'll kind of go halfway in between, something like that. I'm not going to touch the other colors. As we move down, we have sharpening. Again, I'm not going to go too crazy with the sharpening because when I processed it through denoise, it did some of the sharpening. So I am not going to do too much of that, but I will show you two things that I do. I never go past 20, so I'm going to put that up to 20. And then if you hold Option and move Mask, so I'm holding the Option key and I'm moving this mask slider over, and what I do is I go until that black is really black. When all that white stuff's gone, that's like the noise that was left over, that's where I stop. So if I go back, see all that white in the back is noise, so go to right about there. And you can see it's a little bit more sharper. I'm not going to do too much. I'll do about 10 because the denoise already sharpened it up a little bit. Another option I will do sometimes is go to Photo, Edit In, and I might go to Topaz Sharpen AI if I really need it to be sharpened more. I will do that, and that will open it up in Topaz Sharpen AI. But again, this picture came out pretty sharp. I was lucky enough. I shot this at 1/80th of a second, which is a real slow shutter speed, but this baby owlet was just frozen still looking at me, so it's pretty sharp as is. The noise reduction, not going to touch that. You know, again, if you want to get moody, you can go all the way down to vignetting. You can add a little vignetting like that. That looks pretty neat. You can change the roundness so that it doesn't cover up that black on the outside, doesn't cover up the owl. You can also do, sometimes I'll play around with selecting a subject where it's going to select just the subject. Here it's picking up the stick and the owl, or the branch and the owl, which I don't really need the branch, but just for purposes, I'm going to raise the shadows on this a little bit more, and that's going to brighten up that owl a little bit. And that's kind of all I really do. Now, if I wanted to, I'll show you one more thing that I do sometimes. I have this Photoshop beta, Adobe Photoshop beta. If there was something that was kind of bugging me that I didn't like maybe some of these little branches in the back were kind of bugging me, what I would do is I would go Photo, Edit in. Again, this is all linked. So it's going to open up this photo. Here we are in Photoshop beta. And let's just say maybe this little leaf here is kind of bothering me. I'm going to go in there, select it. Generative fill, generate, and I'm going to use a little bit of AI to kind of decide what should go in there if I don't like that little leaf sticking out. Again, I'm being nitpicky. I would probably just leave it. But there are times when there's a little branch sticking out that I don't like, so I will use this. And you can see it got most of it. It left a little green in there, so I can go in. See if I can get that piece. And it really doesn't take that long. Couple seconds wait. And the other neat thing is when it's finished, it gives you 3 choices. So if you don't like, you can see it pretty much took care of that. One more. I'll go back to the first one. And if I really wanted to, I can zoom in and get more. Again, you can really get in there if I don't want any of these sticks. Let Photoshop do its thing, see what it decides. And that did a pretty good job. It completely eliminated those sticks in the background. Kind of makes it a little clean. See if I can clean this one up. And I'm just going to try to get real close to the fur, or the feathers, I should say. I'm going to do a big circle. And again, Photoshop's just deciding what the background should be. So we'll see how it does on this. And it's gone. So I like that. So yeah, so that's kind of how I do it. I don't go too crazy. I use the topaz denoise a lot. I love it. Basically just adjusting the shadows, highlights, a little black, maybe adjust some of the coloring, but I don't go too crazy. I really just try to nail the photo, you know, when I'm taking it. Then you don't have to do too much crazy editing. But if you like this, I'm going to do some more. I hope to show some different situations, some different photos where it requires a little bit more heavy editing, but this one's just kind of a basic one. So if you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe, like the channel for me, and I hope to do more videos again. So thanks for watching. Take care.